On the reaction this week.
Should ex-post office boss Paula Vennells now be forced to pay back the millions she made while overseeing the great post office scandal?
And why didn't SED Davy, Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak do anything for the victims of the scandal who went to them for help?
Plus, Prince Andrew, yes, he's in trouble all over again. How will the problem prince wriggle out of this one?
And why new proposals could see parents in Scotland facing up to 7 years in jail for refusing to allow their children to change gender.
Plus, why Sarah here has an allergic reaction to Jason Donovan's budgie smugglers.
And Andrew takes issue with George Clooney describing Amal as homely. Hello and welcome to our brand new show, The Reaction with me, Sarah Vine.
I'm Andrew Pearce.
And Andrew Pearce. Now, Andrew,
and it's finally happening.
Yes, new year, new show. Well,
exactly.
In fact, I've never had a show before, so completely new show.
Well,
what are your New Year's resolutions, Andrew?
Dry January, and I survived it, even going to the Julian Clary pantomime at the London Palladium, which is, to put it mildly, a bit risque.
Is it?
Yes, a lot risque.
I do love Julian Clary.
Yeah, I do too. And have you made any New Year's resolutions?
Well, I wrote a column in between Christmas and New Year about how my New Year's resolution for this year was to be more Julie Cooper, because you know she got made a dame finally.
She did. Yeah.
And Julie Cooper, who is famous for writing very lovely thank you letters, sent me a very lovely thank you letter. And this brooch, which I am wearing as a good luck talisman for our new show. So my New Year's resolution is to be more Julie Cooper. So that's more gin and some Labradors.
And I'll have to now call her Dame Sarah, because of course she is now Dame Julie Cooper. Only a matter of time.
So first up is this week's nuclear reaction.
There's only one contender for this week's nuclear action, and it's the fury about the post office scandal. Finally, she's bowed to public pressure. Former post office chief Paula Vennells has given up the CBE she was awarded for services to the post office in 2019. But now campaigners are demanding she faces real justice and gives back the $3 million she received in bonuses and pension. Quite right too.
Well, I don't know. I'm a bit ambivalent about this, because I do think it's right that she's given back her CB. I think that was the correct thing to do and a good gesture. I'm just slightly worried. There's a fine line between sort of retribution and witch hunt, and I think we're slightly on the side of witch hunt. I mean, I do think obviously her role needs to be looked at quite carefully, and we need to establish what she did and didn't know, and what level, how incompetent she really was. But, she's not the only person responsible for this. Fujitsu are responsible for it, government ministers are responsible for it, other people who are involved in it are responsible for it. I don't know the details, but she shouldn't bear full responsibility for this. Well, I just hate it when people are... I know that what's happened to these victims is appalling, and she definitely bears some responsibility, but let's just have a sensible discussion about, what can be done.
Well, I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for her at all. She said, I'm listening, I've heard the clamour, I've given back the CB. Well, she needs a hearing aid, because we've been shouting this for months and months and months to give it back.
The Daily Mail's been writing about this story since 2013. I've written columns about it.
But the point is, Sarah, her bonus was based on figures which were predicated on the terrible injustice meted out to these postmasters and postmistresses, many of whom paid over hundreds of thousands of pounds to the post office, who said it was money they'd ripped off from a system. Now remember, the fundamental lie here was that only the postmasters and postmistresses had access to this Horizon IT system, which, all right, was invented by Fujitsu. Well, that was a lie, because that wasn't the case. So Paula Vennells' bonus, enormous, millions, is earned on the back of those postmasters and postmistresses, some of whom went to prison, some of whom had to sell their homes, some of whom have since died without being compensated. So she's got to pay it all back. And remember, she was the boss, the buck stopped us. If she was a politician, Sarah, her feet wouldn't have touched the ground.
But I just think we just need to establish exactly what happened, because I think they need to know that as well.
Well, she was the boss, and we have to remember too, she has a very deep religious faith. I'm very pleased about that. Can you believe she was in the running to be the Bishop of London, the second most powerful figure in the Church of England? What a story that would have been if she was now being forced out of the church.
I mean, I think there's a difference between incompetence and malice here, and I think she was obviously clearly incompetent and not.
So then why give her a bonus?
Fit to do the job, and if the bonus was dependent on. But how long was she at the post office for?
Many years, and she was there for long enough to know there was something seriously going wrong. And look, we can talk about the fact ministers made mistakes too. Look, Sir Ed Davy, notice he's keeping his knighthood.
Yeah.
For what? Why did he get a knighthood anyway? But he, of course, was Postal Office Minister 2010, 2011, 2012, when again and again postmasters went to him to say there's a problem, including the now saintly figure of Alan Bates, the real-life star of the TV drama.
On Necker Island, isn't he? Hasn't Richard Branson given him a holiday?
I'm sure he has, because Richard Branson never misses a chance to get some free publicity, and here you are giving him some. Exactly. You're falling for Branson's charm.
Apparently he invited him
but
to
actually,
Necker Island.
I mean, I think Ed Davy is in a very serious position now because of course he takes advice from civil servants. Of course he takes advice from the Post Office Administrator. Why didn't it occur to a government minister that suddenly 740 postmasters and postmistresses who up until then had an unblemished career in the Post Office, suddenly they're all being accused of the same thing, ripping off the Post Office to the tune of tens of thousands of pounds, and they all say, not me, Gov. He didn't think to say, why so many prosecutions? Why didn't it occur to him?
There is, you know, ministers are only as good as their brief.
No, they should challenge the brief.
But many of them don't.
But they should.
And the question is, did he ever challenge the brief?
Not enough.
Well, I mean, we need to find out. This is the whole point. There needs to be some form of inquiry into what went on here. I was listening to Vince Cable,
who was his boss.
Was his boss at the time, talking about this on Radio 4 the other day, and the sort of total lack of understanding for what these people had been through was really palpable. It was almost like, I mean, Vince Cable is not the most, I don't know, he's not the most sort of warm-hearted sounding person at the best of times, but he did definitely sound like it was just all a massive inconvenience. Yeah. And it really didn't come across very well. And I think
these little people, these poor little people. Exactly. But the other problem I had with Sir Ed Davy, still the Sir Ed Davy, of course, is he then took a consultancy with the law firm hired by the Post Office to batter these postmen and women into submission when they were seeking compensation. £5,000 a month in addition to his MP's salary, £275,000 in a few years. He said, I didn't know they were working for the Post Office. Didn't he? Didn't he think to ask?
He should have found out.
It had been publicly reported.
And Keir Starmer, he
was Director of Public Prosecutions, Sarah, when these extraordinary levels of prosecutions were taking place, and it never occurred to him to ask. Remember, it didn't occur to him to ask about Jimmy Savile either, because
no, that's true.
Nobody told him,
Do you think that there's a sort of, I mean, all these people who were in charge totally missed this.
They did.
They completely missed this. And that's sort of what I'm interested in finding out, why they did that. Because if it, you know, inquiries are to try and determine what went on so that it doesn't happen again. And what I can't understand is why they all missed it. And I wonder whether it's something to do with the fact that it was a computer. And it was in that part, it was at that time where we were all just, everything was becoming computerised, and we were all being given new systems to work for, and none of us really understood them properly. And I think, the sort of era of computer says no, which was very...
So the computer must be right.
So the computer must be right.
Yeah.
So I think there was still that sense that, oh, well, you know, it's a computer, therefore it can't be wrong, therefore these people must be guilty. And I think there's an element of that, and I think we've become much more attuned to the idea that actually these systems don't always work
Absolutely
perfectly.
Right. And we're going after Vennells, in my view, correctly for her bonuses, but we should also go after Fujitsu, because so far it's the taxpayer who's picked up the bill for the compensation, most of which is, I have to say, has been gobbled up by lawyers' fees for these people. Why have Fujitsu not written a cheque for a single penny? They're worth £150 billion.
Well, wasn't one of the chaps from Fujitsu part of the sort of whole testimony?
Yeah,
it was his testimony.
And he wants
immunity from
prosecution. Yeah. I'm sorry.
So he must know that Fujitsu have some responsibility to it.
Well, what I thought was really interesting this week, the Labour MP Kevin Smith, who's a good guy up in Durham, he revealed this week, even on the pilot for this Horizon IT scheme, back in 95-96, when Sir John Major was Prime Minister, there were problems, and a couple of postmasters were prosecuted.
Yes, we knew this because we've written about it.
But he's saying they should get compensation too.
Well, obviously, but the thing is that the system was clearly faulty. They pushed it through because they couldn't delay it any longer, because they felt they had to computerise everything, and then this awful thing happened. But I just think a lot of ministers and people in senior positions just trusted the computers too much, and you should never trust the technology because it's not as good as humans.
But I have to say, OK, finally the Rishi Sunak's got to grips with this and they're going to deal with the compensation, and deal with pardons for all these postmen and women. I don't think that we would be where we are now if it wasn't for that extraordinary TV drama.
No.
Mr. Bates versus the Post Office.
Yeah.
How awful is it that it takes a TV show to finally galvanise?
Well, I think it's also a sort of perfect storm, isn't it? Because we've been writing about it for ages, people have been saying things, and then this TV show comes along and it sort of all crystallises into a big movement.
And of course, these are our people, these are Daily Mail people, these postmasters and post officers. They are the stalwarts of the local community, bulwarks of the local community. They're good men and women, and I think our readers have been horrified about the way they were thrown under a bus by the establishment, by the state. But also the whole thing was just so unbelievably
Kafkaesque, because it's that sort of terrible thing which so many people will recognise, which is that I haven't done anything wrong. I mean, it doesn't just happen on this scale, it happens on tiny scales as well, where people like, I paid my gas bill, but you're saying that I haven't.
Yes.
And it happened to a friend of mine, where, Scottish Power decided that she hadn't paid her gas bill, and she had. They just had the wrong address for her. So they were charging her for and it was, honestly, I've had to help her over the course of 2 years try and sort it out with the Ombudsman. These computer-generated errors happen all the time in our lives, and they are so destructive because there's no way around them, because the sort of numbers just won't let you through.
And try and ring the helpline.
Yeah, and
spend 3 hours on it.
And because they've replaced humans, so there are no humans to help, and then the humans can't override the system anyway.
No. Do you think they might replace us?
Well, they could try.
AI? The AI version of Dame Sarah Vine?
Well, let's see. Anyway, let us know what you think. You can email us your thoughts at reaction@dailymail.co.uk, or you can comment below. Now, things just keep getting murkier and murkier for poor old Prince Andrew. He is the focus of this week's royal reaction. Things seem to be calming down a bit for Prince Andrew. Over Christmas, he was actually invited along with Fergie to join the royal family at Sandringham, much to many people's surprise. But now, with more lurid claims literally landing by the day about his links to Epstein's paedophile island, which he, of course, strongly denies, it could get a lot worse, couldn't it?
It could, and he's guilty of one thing, at least, we know, because, of course, he's denied underage sex. He's even denied potentially meeting Virginia Giuffre, who made the original allegations. But what he's guilty of is appalling judgment.
Well, I mean, there's no doubt that he was very good friends with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who were both convicted sex traffickers.
He likes rich people. I remember the first time I went to interview him.
Well, so did lots of people. Mandelson went to his island, Clinton went to his island. Loads of people were friends with Epstein because he had loads of money and private jets and a nice island, and they loved it.
But Prince Andrew is always, he's a royal, he hasn't got much money, he's got his Royal Navy pension. But I remember going to interview him at Royal Lodge. Now, I thought rather stupidly it would be a lodge, quite small, 3 or 4 bedrooms. It's a palace.
It's literally a palace.
It is enormous.
It's 50 rooms or something, isn't it?
Yeah. And when I arrived, I said, I could hear this noise. I said, what's that? It was a helicopter landing in the garden. We were going to Birmingham. Right. And I remember saying to him, do you not realise, as we're in the helicopter, why people call you Air Miles Andy and think you're out of touch? Because we could go in a car, go on a train. He wanted to go in a helicopter because you get there quicker. No, he likes the grandeur, the glamour, and that's what's got him into big trouble.
He's always had terrible spare-itis, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. But he's going to get into a lot of pressure now about Royal Lodge. Should he keep it? He's not a working royal.
No.
It's he paid a lot of money for it. He had to pay money
Costs
to
a lot to
refurbish
maintain.
it. Yeah, but it's on a 50-year lease with the Crown Estate, and King Charles instinctively, I'm told, wants him out, but it's also his brother, and he loves him.
Yes, I mean,
and that's the private side of the royal family.
I did write about this weekend. I think that Andrew needs to be out of sight and out of mind. And I think living in a big palace in Windsor is not a great idea. I think you should go to Sandringham, because Sandringham is in Norfolk, which is full of old toffs like Andrew, and they can sit around all day long having dinner parties and lunch parties and generally, entertaining each other.
And it's a very nice house.
And it's a very nice house, and it's out of the way, and I think he should just go and be quiet for a while there.
And he could manage the estate. Could be the gamekeeper.
Exactly. He could wander around with a stick.
Yeah, and he could take Sarah Ferguson with him, because we wouldn't miss her.
I mean, she's been incredibly loyal to him. I think one of the things that I would say about Andrew is that I think we all know that he's his worst enemy. You look at all these allegations, you look at all these things that have been said about him. And particularly there was that one this week about Giuffre saying that she'd been paid $15,000 to sleep with him in London.
You'd want a lot more money. You'd want a lot more money to sleep with Prince Andrew than $15,000.
But the thing is, do we know that Andrew knew that she'd been paid that money? We don't.
If it's true.
If it's true, we don't know any of these things. And then what I thought was also interesting was Epstein's lawyer, what's he called, Dershowitz, saying that he thought that Andrew should have contested Virginia Giuffre's allegations.
He just thought she'd have won.
And
he would have won.
Instead of which he paid her £12 million.
And there was a suggestion that the reason he did settle was because he was under pressure from his mother, the Queen, who, let's face it, would have had to have written a lot of the cheque.
And
for
she
the money.
probably thought, quite reasonably, look, we don't want to see him in court. That won't help us.
It would have been catastrophic.
It would have been. Well, who knows? Actually, we just don't know because we can't prove
look how bad he would have been. Look how bad he was in the Newsnight interview, which he actually thought, alone in the whole country, he did very well in. He was appalling. Pompous, entitled.
I think that's gone a long way to ruining his reputation.
Yeah.
I think if he hadn't done that, people might still feel a little bit of sympathy for him, but he came across as so obnoxious and so lacking in self-knowledge in that interview. I think a lot of people who, like me, had been a bit, well, okay,
but
I'd like to see some proof, were a bit like, okay, he's awful and clearly not a very nice person. So I think that's the difficulty for him. I don't see any way back for him. I think it's a big test of King Charles. It's sort of almost the biggest test so far for him.
Fergie will stick by him though, won't she?
Fergie will stick by him.
Limp it like, because next to him, that gives her continued exposure. But again, when I interviewed him, he said, I'm always going to be friends with Sarah Ferguson. She's the mother of my children. And when there are divorce, it's tricky for the kids. So in one sense, it's quite noble that they're still friends.
I think
but
does
she go with him to Sandringham when they give up the Royal Lodge? Because she lives in the Royal Lodge. They could go 3 months without seeing each other. That house is so vast. Not going to be quite so easy at Sandringham.
No, not going to be quite so easy at Sandringham. But I really do think that he needs to be out of sight and out of mind. I think that the King has to, make a decision based on his role as monarch, not on his role as brother.
The other thing we could do, we could send him to Montecito in California. There's plenty of room in that house, rattling around with those other two very popular royals,
maybe
Harry and Meghan.
Prince Harry could write a book together.
Yes,
that would be lovely.
The only consolation for Prince Andrew is that Prince Harry is vying with him in the unpopularity stakes for who's the least popular. I think Meghan is probably the least popular, and deservedly so.
Prince Andrew, my story. That's what we want to read, isn't it?
Yeah. And he can tell you, did you meet Virginia Giuffre? Oh, you didn't. So why did you write a cheque for £12 million?
The slight problem with letting him loose like that is that if he has no money, he might be forced to do what Harry's done and write a book, so he gets paid loads, and you don't want that.
Do you think the royals have never got any money? I don't buy that, really.
Well, they've got lots of other things, haven't they?
Sell a painting.
What?
Sell a painting.
Sell a painting. So what do you think should be done about Prince Andrew? Let us know your reaction at reaction.
Could sell a tiara.
Shush, I'm making a thing.
Okay.
reaction@dailymail.com, .co.uk, or comment below.
Please do. And if you don't agree with me, I don't mind much. If you agree with Sarah, I do mind. They're at it again. Who do I mean? The Scottish National Party. Their latest bonkers proposal means parents, listen to this, could face up to 7 years in jail under the plans to ban conversion therapy. This would mean that any actions designed to change or suppress a child's gender identity would become illegal under this radical, bizarre new law. Sarah, I thought it had all ended with the ghastly Nicola Sturgeon, who's gone, thank the Lord. She can disappear in her mobile home if it was paid for by her. But under Humza Yousaf, known by everybody as useless, they're going even further with this deranged stuff on gender ideology, changing genders.
Their argument is that there used to be conversion therapy against
like
gays,
for
people like you.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is they're saying that it's the same thing, but it's not the same thing, because the thing about being gay is that it doesn't mean that you then go and cut off your penis,
or change your pronoun,
cut off your breasts, or start taking hormone blockers. It's a sexual preference about who you like to be in love with or sleep with, and that's fine. But so they're not the same thing. Conversion therapy for gay people is not the same as conversion. They're not the same thing. Children can and have done terrible damage to themselves by being confused about their gender, and it's the duty of any parent to chaperone their children through those sort of difficult, confusing years. I mean, you know, my own children have at various points decided that they wanted to be, I don't know, doctors, space cadets, you know, children go through all sorts of crazy things. You know, they want blue hair, they want pink hair, they want this, they want that, they want to wear they grow out of it. And the thing is that you've got to be there for them as they go through, as they work out who they are and what it is that they want in life. And I think that having a guiding hand on your child is not the same as trying to bully your child into being something that they don't want to be. And the other thing I would say is that I don't know at any point, you know, whether it's ever a good idea to send a child's parent to jail for 7 years, because children need their parents.
Quite.
I mean, they would be devastated if mum went to jail.
We're trying to avoid putting mums in prison where possible.
Because wherever possible, you want your parents to be there to look after you.
But also, we want to keep the state out of the front door.
Completely.
We do not want the state knocking on the front door saying, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, I gather you're trying to persuade your child not to change their gender. We're going to bang you up. We're going to take you down to the police station. This is a conversation. It's called free speech, and it's what... I'm not a parent, obviously, but it's what the conversation you should be having with your children.
But also, we all know how susceptible children are these days to what goes on social media
Peer
and
pressure.
what they see on TikTok and this, that and the other. And if you go on TikTok, you know, things like top surgery, it's really trending, literally trending. There are loads of people on there going, oh, it's fantastic, I've had my breasts removed and now I'm really happy, la, la, la. I mean, the thing is, maybe that's right for you, but children are really, really gullible and susceptible, especially when they're young, especially when they don't have their frontal cortex developed and they can't make sort of value judgments like that. And the reason we have, you know, the concept of minors is to protect children from making catastrophic decisions that are irreversible about their lives. And I just think, you know, you wouldn't let your 10-year-old go off and get married to somebody they met down the pub. Why would you let them change gender?
I think what the SNP are doing, frankly, is wicked.
I do think so.
Absolutely wicked. They're
horrible.
criminalising conversations between parents and children. When a child says, "Look, I think, Mum, I want to be a girl or I want to be a boy," they're going to criminalise it. 7 years? Who came up with that idea? You wouldn't get that if you burgled someone's house and knocked somebody over the head in the street and mugged them very seriously.
But if my child came up to me and
said,
if my son came up to me and said, "Mum, I would like to be a girl," I'd go, "Why don't you try it for a bit and see how it goes, and then we can take a view later on."
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, yes, of course, you know, here we are, let's go and get you operated on and give you loads of broccas.
They're going to come after teachers next.
That would make me go to jail, wouldn't it? Because I'd be practicing conversion
they'll
therapy.
come after teachers next. And this is all happening at a time, of course, when the Tavistock Institute in London, round the corner from where I live, actually, which is the terrible place, in my view, which has been giving teenagers hormone pills to change their bodies, sometimes without the consent of the parents.
Or knowledge.
Shocking.
Yeah, and you're alienating, you're inserting yourself between... But again, this is something that is very prevalent on social media, is this idea that you get divorced from your parents because they are somehow part of the whole kind of aggression on you if you're you know, and so there's the people who are, you know, most parents, not all parents, most parents love their children and just want them to be happy and want what's best for them. That's really their only motivation.
Yeah. And this gender stuff, it's got to wait until they're a bit older.
I think so. 18. Yeah.
Should we start at 18?
I think 21.
Okay,
I think it's
21,
a very serious, life-changing decision.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think you have to live in that skin for a little bit before you decide to do these things.
And I tell you, politically, it's a catastrophic mistake by the SNP, whose popularity has collapsed since the departure of horrible, ghastly Nicola Sturgeon. Wee Jimmy Cranky, as her critics call her. And because there's no public support for this in Scotland.
No.
There just isn't.
And anyway, what do you think? Let us know at reaction@dailymail.co.uk, or you can comment below. Jason Donovan and his budgie smugglers. I'm sorry, there is absolutely no excuse unless you are, what's he called, that sweet little boy who does
Tom Daly, who's in his 20s, who's an
20s.
international diver, an Olympic gold medalist diver.
Yes, you cannot wear pants that small in public.
No, and he clearly only needs small pants, Jason Donovan, looking at that photograph. Look, he's 56, he's in good shape, he's emerging from the sea. He is not James Bond, what's he called? Daniel Craig, who emerged looking the sort of the reverse of Ursula Andress in Dr. No in the 1960s. He is not Daniel Gray. He does not have that body, and he does not look great in Budgie Smugglers.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of feel the same about celebrities in string bikinis, though. I just think sometimes, you know, just wear a little bit more to cover yourself up.
I can remember interviewing on a mobile phone once Peter Stringfellow, who used to run the nightclub, and he was on a boat in Spain.
He used to wear leopard print ones.
And I said, "Can you just tell me what you're wearing, by the way?" He was wearing a leopard skin thong. I was just so relieved there was no camera.
No.
Because that would have been too much.
There's no excuse for that.
There's no excuse. There is an age by which you have to go into Bermudas, you have to go into shorts. I wouldn't be seen dead, and also not in black
So you don't
ones.
don't wear thongs when you go.
What's going on with the black nail varnish, Jason?
Well, apparently, see, he is in the Rocky Horror Picture Show in Panto.
Don't they use? Don't they have nail varnish
black nail
remover?
polish is very fashionable.
Is it? What, even till 56?
Yeah, it's a thing. No, everyone has to wear. Men, women, it's a thing.
Well, why aren't you wearing it?
Because I like red nail polish.
Okay. I've only worn nail polish in my life once. I went to a fancy dress show at Cheltenham Town Hall. I was very cross not to win. I came third. I was dressed up as the devil. Some people said I didn't need any costume at all. I certainly didn't need makeup. But I had red nail varnish on. And, of course, when I got home, I didn't know anything to take the nail varnish off. So I go to my greengrocers in the morning and said, "Oh, something to tell me of you as I'm paying."
Well, at least you didn't have shellac, which you have to get off with sort of all sorts of machines.
What is shellac?
Oh, it's the one that it's complicated. You don't need to know.
Complicated.
It's fine. You don't need to know.
What?
What's your allergic reaction of the week?
Well, I love this. The woke warrior himself, George Clooney, described his wife, Amal Clooney, who is one of the world's most celebrated human rights ball
also
lawyer.
Very beautiful.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, and fabulous.
And fabulous.
I think she's fabulous.
He called her homely. Now, when I think of the word homely, I think of cookery books from the 1950s. Mrs. Beeton, apple pie and comfort.
Yes.
You would not call a superstar lawyer homely, I don't think.
I once had a boyfriend.
What was his name?
I once had a boyfriend.
Do we know him?
No, it was a very long time ago, Andrew.
Do.
I'm very old, remember? And he said to me that I reminded him of the Oxo Cube woman. Do you remember?
I do.
Who was the epitome of homely.
Yeah.
And I immediately
Which is why she got the job. You dumped him.
Because I don't think anyone ever wants to be described as homely as a woman.
No.
I think the thing is, I think at the end of the day, all men want to be married to their mums because mums do all the cooking and cleaning and looking after of you, for you. So there's always an element. You have to be very careful in a marriage not to morph from wife to mother. It's quite hard.
Yeah. I'd love to know what Amal Clooney thought about that. I can't think. I mean, last time I saw a photograph of her, she was deep in conversation with Barack Obama's wife, Michelle Obama. She is a real player, isn't she?
No, she's a total player.
Do you think she's ever cooked a Lancashire hot pot or a homemade apple pie?
I don't know, she may have done, but she doesn't look like she's ever eaten one.
No, she looks like she should eat one because she's
she could have a good, nice roast chicken.
Yeah.
I suppose what he's trying to say is that she's multi-talented and she's not just a beautiful, clever lawyer. She's also very good at...
I think he's also revealing he does nothing indoors. He probably doesn't pick
what
up the towels.
What was the context of him saying that she was homely?
He was just talking about why he loved his wife.
Okay.
And, but I mean, I thought, you don't pick up the towels, you leave your dirty pants and dirty socks on the bedroom floor.
He gets undressed at night and just leaves his pants and steps out of them and gets into the bed.
I think he's probably not even brought his wife a cup of tea in bed. I think there's a bit of a giveaway, don't you think?
I don't know. I quite like George Clooney.
Did you ever use Oxo cubes?
No, they're disgusting. Oh, no, they're not. Sorry, I can't say that.
They probably advertised in the Daily Mail. So
no, I was never the Oxo Cube woman, but it really upset me because every woman, even if she's like me, homely, wants to think of herself.
But the Oxo Mum is an institution.
I know she is an institution, and he said, and what I love about you is you're just like the Oxo Mum. And I thought, what? No.
That's the end of that then.
The late, great Linda Bellingham.
Who I did meet, actually. Yeah. She was very nice and very feisty and nothing like the Oxo woman at all. Yeah. Really feisty. I know. Which, of course, you are.
Yes.
So perhaps you are the Oxo
woman.
woman.
But I can make quite a good stew, in fairness to me.
Well, am I going to be able to taste it?
That is it for today. Thank you for joining us on our first show, and join us again next Wednesday, if you can, for more reaction to the stories making the headlines.
Well, we'll also be including some of your reaction to the reaction. So see you again next week. Bye.
Bye.